Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And while the banks, as we've mentioned a million times before, are going bankrupt, their cash deposit ratio is astonishing. I recently talked with Ron Paul about it as well here at WAM, and you know, there are so many issues hitting the banks. We recently talked about how Deutsche Bank was laying off, well, it was looking to lay off 10,000 employees, that's 1 in 10. And they also put their foot down and said, we are laying off 1,000 employees. And now, as this Quartz article says, banks in Europe have cut jobs to the lowest in at least 20 years. And as the article goes into, European banks are cutting headcount across the continent as branches close and customers handle more of their financial needs online. This presents an opportunity for leaner digital-focused startups, but also raises concerns for people with less access to or familiarity with internet banking. Technology is transforming the financial industry. More than half of EU residents used internet banking in 2017, compared with 29% in 2008, according to the European Banking Federation. This has had a substantial impact on the livelihoods of people who work in the banking industry. The number of people in the EU employed by banks has fallen to the lowest level since at least 1997, the year the European Central Bank's data begins. Bank employment fell by 70,000 last year to about 2.7 million. Bank branches are closing. More than 5,800 were shut down last year, bringing the total number still open to around 183,000. More than 18,000 branches have closed in Spain since 2007, the most in the EU, followed by 8,769 for Germany and 5,800 for Italy. So I want to really go into this a bit because this kind of hits on two edges here. Because first of all, we see the media trying to hype up that, well, it's just because we're going digital that's why everyone's leaving the banks. There's a bit more to it than that. There's not as much money going into the banks because people are getting more and more impoverished. The banks are, let's face it, facing massive bubbles left and right. The derivatives bubble is multi-quadrillion dollar level, and they're insanely in debt. We've talked, like I mentioned earlier, the cash deposit ratio shows that they are basically bankrupt. Many of the banks have less than 1% of deposits covered in cash. But also this goes into another subject matter, and that is the centrally planned cashless society. We've been talking about it forever here at WAM, and we are seeing it play out in front of our eyes, which is basically that first, if you put your money in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And if your money's always going through the banks via digital transactions, legal tender laws, it's never your money, it's always the bank's, and you are essentially enslaved to the banking system right where they want you, because if they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, pushing you into perfect servitude. And let's not forget that, these banks are all heavily involved in fractional reserve lending, all that craziness, printing money out of thin air. Who didn't see this coming, folks? So sure, the media says it's just moving up to the next level. Everything's fine. Don't worry. It's just a change in the tides. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that. John, what do you think?
Well, I think there's a third thing that's even bigger than the last two. It's the debt problem. It's the maximum debt saturation that you have in the economy. There's nobody else left to, in debt anymore in the economy. So that's also another thing. The banks, their main business model is to indebt people. Well, it's falling apart because they kind of maxed out their growth potential in the world economy, especially in Europe. It's very indebted. Italy, Spain, and also other countries like Greece. All of these countries have been, devastated by massive collapses that happened in 2008, and they're no better off today. Most of them are completely bankrupt still, and debt is just rising to new levels all across the board, and there's no accountability to these banksters. They just keep on playing their little game of indebting as much people as they can so they could get a little bit of money, because that's where they make their profits, is the interest and all the fees and all the, of course, when it comes to deposits and so on, they're great at making little fees if you have a transaction that's coming out, and then people are low on cash. Well, they thought that they could put in the money and time into the account, but then they're too late, so then they get late fees. They get the the transaction canceled, like the direct withdrawal, and then of course you pay a fee on top of that again. So there's lots of ways that the banks have a massive business model that is just constantly stealing more and more money from people. And
this is another reason why I like decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, because it's like, oh, everyone was like, oh, the fees. Well, you send $10,000 and let's say you spend 80 cents. Oh no, the fees are so terrible. Try doing that with a bank. Not only would you have the government coming after you, but you go through massive fees. It would take forever if they even approve it. I mean, there's such a huge difference, and I'm going to go soon into the differences between the cashless society we're facing, how we're seeing it around the world, and then cryptocurrencies that are decentralized. But you have like the Deutsche Bank share price up, which is hilarious because I hate Deutsche Bank. But what do you think?
That's all I gotta say. No, a little bit more to it. If you look at the Deutsche Bank share price, it's almost at record lows again. It's just continuing, downward spiral for Deutsche Bank, the biggest bank in Europe, basically. And that
Trump keeps his money.
Yeah, and that should scare everybody because the biggest bank in Europe is in problem. Well, what caused the problems in the United States back that caused all over the board collapse was just small bank like Lehman Brothers. Well, we're talking about the biggest bank in Europe here, and of course Europe used to be Deutsche Bank used to be the massive derivatives arm of the American banks. Well, now BaFin has come in and trying to restrict Deutsche Bank from being involved in derivatives, which is mostly an invention from the American banksters. They were the some of the first ones to really financially engineer to the next level of benevolence. But
I do want to cut in for just 1 second, John. I can't help but remember that when we did videos, I think it was February 2016, we were talking about how Deutsche Bank's derivative exposure at that time was $75 trillion, which is the GDP of the entire world. But yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no worries there. I think they were like 15 times or something bigger than the GDP of Germany, which is their home country. So it just shows you how insane it is. Now back to the importance of what you were talking about there, Josh, with the cashless implementations. Now they're slowly moving away. They're slowly taking away branches. They're making it harder and harder for people to actually have access to physical money out in the markets. Of course, the Eurozone hasn't been one of the biggest ones to take away the actual physical cash. The biggest ones are Norway and Sweden. They've been the heaviest ones to remove cash from circulation to make it harder and harder for people to actually have some privacy in the economy. Now, of course, what they want to do is they want to slowly take away, and I believe we're gonna have during the next crisis. I believe either there's going to be big announcements of taking all the biggest bills that are available, of course, or there could be a full out removal of cash. And of course, Kenneth Rogoff has thought a lot about this. And he said, oh yeah, there's no worries, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually give debit cards to everybody that don't have access to a bank account. And yeah, look at how great that's going to be.
Yeah, that reminds me of India, where they gave all the homeless people bank accounts. Yeah, it's for your own good. Right, sure.
Yeah, and it's just to get everybody on the grid, because they don't like anything that they don't have control over the government, because all that it is about this cashless society, this cashless push, it's number one, it's about taxation. It's about coming after your money. That's, they talked about it in their book, The Curse of Cash by Kenneth Rogoff, that was the number one priority of a cashless society, was to eliminate, the potential hiding money in the black market, which is the
hiding it from theft.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's just insane how this push has become. And then, of course, second, the other great thing about having a cashless society is they know every single thing that you do, and they could watch. No, don't worry, I got nothing to hide. Well, if they come after you, let's say that, me and Josh, for example, they don't like that we talk bad about the banks. Well, they could easily restrict us from any access to the monetary grid. Well, don't worry about that, because we're going to go to crypto. We don't care. But for a lot of other people that don't know about this yet, it'll be a devastation if you can just get taken off the grid that easily.
Yeah, ask China about that. They know a thing or two about sesame credit or social credit, and I wanted to get into that quickly, John, because one of the big issues that we face with a cashless society, first they're trying to jack interest rates up all across the board throughout the world. It's a desperation move, like I mentioned earlier, something that Ron Paul was talking about in a recent interview with him, and the idea is to jack them up and ensure that we don't go negative, but look at places that have gone negative. For example, Sweden, one of the most cashless societies in the world, if not the most cashless, but there are two places that are the most powerful cashless societies, and that is China and India. China and India are leading this cause. Australia is not too far behind, but nonetheless, India and China for sure. They have social credit in China where you walk across the street, you jaywalk, and then you get a text, a fine to your cell phone at the same time as they put your face on a big billboard, video billboard. I mean, that's a little Orwellian if you don't mind me saying so. But then you also have India, which has the Aadhaar system, the eye retina scans, while a lot of people in India don't want to go by this because it's one of the most historically cash-loving societies on the planet. Nonetheless, it's a testing ground for sure, and we have the IMF talking about putting their headquarters in Beijing at the same time as India and China both crack down on, get this, decentralized cryptocurrencies. So we have people talking about how the cashless society, the centrally planned one, being implemented into the SDR at the IMF, if they could ever get that done, which I have doubts because they are useless. But this idea that somehow that's Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is being cracked down upon with regulations, taxes, laws in places like China, in places like India, the top centrally planned cashless societies on the planet, folks. And let's look at where value comes from. Subjective value, value based on scarcity, application use, demand. Gold has incredible value because it can only be created in supernovas. There's not a lot of it on the planet, and for that reason, it's rare, so it's scarce, and it's able to be used for a lot of things. So application use and people, it has demand. People want to use it for payment, at least historically they have. And now look at something like cryptocurrencies that are decentralized and have fundamental value. Very few of them do, but nonetheless, the ones that do just change the world forever. And Bitcoin has scarcity, only 21 million coins ever to be created.
Well, there's less actually now.
Well, yeah, technically, there's very few left. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have application use. It's great for transactions. It's rather fast, despite what a lot of people are saying. Well, while I agree that it could be faster, it's still very fast compared to any other centralized payment system. And then of course it has demand. People are willing to use it. It's a kingpin of cryptocurrencies. People want to trade it. Now, do banks get involved? Of course. They love market manipulation. They do the same thing to gold and silver. Will governments try to get involved? Of course. These guys have to cover their tracks, you realize. They are going to lose so much, and they know that that's why these desperation moves are being made, because they know they're going to lose a lot. And of course they're going to secure their wealth. Why wouldn't they? They'd be stupid not to. And these people are more intelligent than they look or sound. Believe me, these people are not good people, and they know exactly what they're doing. Some of the guys, yanking on the coattails of the upper echelon might not know what the hell they're doing, but nonetheless, the people at the top know what they're doing. They know that this system will collapse, and they know that they need to protect themselves. So of course they're going to get involved. If we blasted gold and silver for everyone that owns gold and silver, I mean, come on, really, think about it. So my point is that we have something that can create alternatives and infrastructure in which we can build decentralized alternatives upon, with everything from Bitcoin to EOS to Ethereum, though I'm not a big fan of Ethereum, but nonetheless, it's an infrastructure. There are ways to build upon this system that breaks free from the banking system and the government and replaces them. But of course, people have to keep saying it's a mark of the beast. It wouldn't make sense to make a world currency out of Bitcoin. That's why the countries that are testing world currencies that are cashless are trying to attack Bitcoin and others, among also trying to drive the price down and making money and gains out of it. So all I have to say for that is we have a system that can replace the current one, but we just have to understand that we need to seize this as a free market competing currency system and not, allow these major manipulators to continue to manipulate it like they have with gold and silver for so long. But again, once the banking system goes down, which it will inevitably, we will have our free market back. We will be able to reclaim the non-manipulated, more so free market competing currency innovative structure of this market, and we will be able to take it back. But for now, it's a beach ball underwater. They're pushing it down and it's gaining pressure. So watch out, folks. I mean, what do you think, John?
I think there's a big but there. When it happens, we need to be awakened and need to understand what's happening, because or else you'll have these bozos. Because look at history, they always come back. You know, might be a chain of the family or whoever it is that have the knowledge of this banking and how to do it, and then the wonders that it could create with the growth in the economy and all these great, fantastic things that they promise. They will always try to come back in and try to control. So really be, on the watch out for what these banksters are up to, where they're positioning themselves. A lot of them might try to, get on board, sit on boards, or move into the other power structures that these cryptos have created. That's why we need to, watch out for decentralized exchanges, for example. That's another big, problem there, where there's now atomic swaps coming out, and people should be more looking at not just trading it, because there's too many people. Like, I get hounded every single day, Josh, by traders, by new ICOs coming out. It's just this massive push to just make money, and that's fine. Try to make money, but you can't start to financialize money like in currency. That's you have the currency trading currently. It's a big problem. I see that as a huge problem with financialization, because that's what have taken down any currency or any other government throughout history.
Yeah, so if you see scams online, don't buy into them, and don't look towards paper contracts like ETFs, another version of a scam. Don't get involved in those.
Be excited about ETFs coming out. Yeah, that's the worst thing that exists.
Yeah, the announcement.
The
announcement itself will cause Bitcoin to rally, but then the release will cause Bitcoin to tank, and we saw that last year with futures. Yeah. Well, I know I found it funny that the SEC was like, it's too prone to manipulation, Bitcoin, so we shouldn't put an ETF on it with the Winklevoss twins. And then it's like, well, wait a second, the SEC is saying this of all people. The SEC is talking about market manipulation, saying it's a bad thing. It's the SEC. Come on.
And I want to debunk one more bozo out there that wants to, he kind of understands everything about economics, but then he attacks Bitcoin. James Rickards, what are you saying? Like, oh yeah, it's all about terrorism, it's all about criminals using the currency. Meanwhile, there's actually an article that came out recently saying that every time, ISIS or anybody else tried to actually get and use these currencies, they weren't, hidden or anything. They actually got caught every single time because it was traceable.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's utterly insane.
It makes more sense to use fiat if you're going to try and hide things. It makes no sense when you're I mean, come on, folks. Yeah, of course you can hide you can be anonymous to some extent, but when you take out that cash, good luck. I mean, the point is, when you have a lot of these terrorist groups being funded 99% with fiat, does that mean that we should be like, the governments? Or does that mean that we should be, banning fiat?
Like 3 trillions of it.
I mean, folks, it's ridiculous. But and also on something that you said there, John, I mean, when it comes down to it, they're going to try and attack it. They're going to try and manipulate it. They're going to try and sweep in. But the thing is, with the market, the free market, when it comes down to something like cryptocurrency, they haven't been able to catch up with the internet in a long time. The internet was created, I believe, by the state in order to keep tabs on people, track people, have complete control over the populace, the narrative, everything, and that was taken away from them rather fast. We could see that they're just trying to catch up now with vast censorship and centralization on the internet, but nonetheless, I mean, we've been able to utilize this tool against the state for so long, and they're going to try and catch up with many of the cryptocurrencies, try and infiltrate. We've seen that with the digital currency group, for example, but I don't believe it'll last. I don't believe with a true free market system where people understand what they're in, understand the product, understand who is releasing the product, understand those around it, surrounding that product. I can't imagine people go, oh, well, let's see, they employ slave labor, they believe in government, they want to centralize things, they want to tax things, blah, 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 blah. I can't imagine people going, yeah, I want that. I want in on that. The whole idea of cryptocurrencies is to break free from that. So let's like not get heavily involved in things like Ripple, for example, and let's just ensure that we have control as individuals on the free market with the demand of our dollar for this amazing new system. Anyways, there's a lot more to talk about. The banks are going down, the fiat currencies are going down. They always have throughout history. You can't put a date on the crash, but you know it's going to happen. So for that reason, it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. So make sure to be self-sustainable, independent, decentralized, and of course, rule yourselves. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
Be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as they bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, you know, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.